Hello, everyone. This is Will Hillenbrand, and I'd like to welcome you to the Kids Book Showcase here for the Buckeye Book Fair. I have a distinguished panel that will be joining us for this 45-minute session. And to start with, I'd like to let you see a video that introduces you to each one of the panelists, and you also see something about their books. And then I'll moderate a session of questions for each one of them. But let's begin with the video. Welcome to the 2020 Virtual Buckeye Book Fair, Kids Book Showcase. Discussion and Q&A for all ages. This is Will Hillenbrand, moderator of this session. I would like to introduce as follows: Tim Bowers, Loren Long, and C.F. Payne. Now to start with, Tim Bowers. Tim Bowers has been drawing animals and telling stories with his art since childhood. He has illustrated over 50 children's books, including the New York Times bestsellers Big Dream, Little Pig, and Dinosaur Pet. His books have garnered various awards, including the Chicago Public Library's Best of the Best list and several Junior Library Guild selections. When his schedule permits, Tim travels to schools and libraries to promote literacy and share his work with students. He and his wife live in Central Ohio and are proud grandparents. In his spare time, Tim enjoys playing his ukulele. About his book, Acoustic Rooster's Barnyard Boogie, starring Indigo Bloom, by Kwame Alexander and illustrated by Tim, based on the Kennedy Center musical. As Indigo Bloom drifts off to sleep on the night before she's scheduled to sing in the Garden City Community Festival, she isn't sure she's brave enough to take the stage. But once she falls asleep, Indigo finds herself in a dream world with characters from her favorite book, Acoustic Rooster and His Barnyard Band. The band members include Miss Derry Parton and Duck Ellington are rehearsing, and they invite Indigo to join the group. But when the storm destroys the barn, the animals are left with almost nothing. Can Indigo rally the band to work together to save their home? And can they help Indigo find her voice in time for the festival? Tim also has another book, Memoirs of a Tortoise. Using quiet humor and thoughtful musings, this sweet story reminds readers to make the most of our time with loved ones. Next, Loren Long. Loren Long is the author and illustrator of the New York Times best-selling Otis series and the illustrator of Margaret Wise Brown's Good Day, Good Night. He is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of President Barack Obama's picture book, Of Thee I Sing, and Love by Matt De La Pena. Loren lives with his family in Madeira, Ohio, near Cincinnati, Ohio. About his book, The Night Before Christmas, by Clement C. Moore. Pictures by Loren Long. In this book, Loren's touching interpretation of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," readers are invited to visit the homes of 4 families, each on Christmas Eve. What do these four families share? The excitement and anticipation of the most splendid night of the year. In this reimagined tale, Loren Long reminds us no matter where we live, all children share the same wish for Christmas magic. Next, C.F. Payne. C.F. Payne has illustrated more than a dozen picture books, including the New York Times best-selling Mousetronaut by astronaut Mark Kelly, the Texas Bluebonnet Winner, Shoeless Joe, and Black Betsy, written by Phil Bilner, and the New York Times bestsellers The Remarkable Farkle McBride and McWhobber, both by John Lithgow. Chris has taught both graduate and undergraduate classes. Chris lives with his family in Lebanon, Ohio, near Cincinnati, Ohio. His book, Breaking the Ice, the true story of the first woman to play in the National Hockey League, written by Angie Bolero and illustrated by Chris Payne. From the time Manon Rhéaume was old enough to tie on a pair of ice skates, she dreamed of playing hockey. So, when the team her father coached was in need of a goalie, 5-year-old Manon begged for a chance to play. She didn't care she was the only girl in the entire league, or that hockey was considered a boys' sport. In 1977, in her hometown of Lac-Beauport, Quebec, Canada, she just wanted to be in the game. Her father agreed, and Manon embarked on a groundbreaking career in hockey. At every level of competition, people tried to keep Manon from playing, but play she did, earning her place on the prestigious team and ultimately becoming the first woman to play a game in the National Hockey League. With an afterword by Manon herself, this true story of courage, determination, and love for the sport tells how an amazing woman dared to go where no woman had gone before and inspired generations of girls and women to take to the ice. And now lastly, we have my book, Snow Friends, written by Marjorie Kyler and illustrated by yours truly. Will Hillenbrand is the creator of many picture books, including Snowman's Story, Down by the Station, Down by the Barn, Spring is Here. He has also illustrated many beloved books for children, including the winter-themed The Biggest, Best Snowman by Marjorie Kyler. A little bit about Snow Friends. Snow, snow, and more snow. It's the perfect day to play in the newly fallen snow. Oscar can't contain his excitement, and before his boy Matt knows it, Oscar is off on a wintry adventure. What will he find? And now I'd like to be able to, let me see, I'm going to close out of this. I would like to be able to talk to each one of the panelists, but in the order that they were introduced. I'm going to talk to and have some questions for Tim, then I'll go to Loren, and then Chris, each one of us having about 6-7 minutes each. And about your book, Tim, I was just kind of curious about, you have so many characters in your book, animals and people. And I was wondering about how you come up with those characters and how do you think about making them for each one? And you can be specific if you'd like.
Okay, well, first I'd like to thank the Buckeye Book Fair for putting together a program doing the best they can in such an unusual year. And it's affected our lives quite a bit, including a spillover into the books that I've illustrated in the last year and a half. But the characters, I enjoy illustrating animals and people, and I find that when you're creating a character, the expressions are a great vehicle for storytelling, and so you can apply expressions to animals and people kind of the same way. You know, a smiley face, you get the mouth going up and the eyes, whether it's an animal or a person, you kind of you work with the shapes that you have and kind of make that work. Yeah, what was your question again?
Well, you answered it. In fact, you've got a good example right behind your head where you looks like a dinosaur there with a great expression. And
I've done a lot of characters, and some are more difficult to work with than others. But if there's two eyes and a mouth, then you can usually create some emotional connection there with the character, I think.
With your acoustic rooster book, I mean, really with that, you've also introduced not only that kind of expression, but the musical aspects of it. And, playing the ukulele like you do, does that have any influence on being able to say, well, you kind of get into that groove a little better?
Well, I love music. Next to art, music is my biggest interest. And so whenever I work on a project that includes music, and I've done a number of them, I'm really excited. It started with Pajamas, my second book by Livingston Taylor. It was a song he wrote for Sesame Street. And so it started there, and I've worked with Kenny Loggins on one of his, on Footloose, Neil Sedaka, when he did a CD in the back of his book, Dinosaur Pet, and so on. So there has been a musical tie-in to a lot of the books I've worked on, and including Acoustic Rooster. And when I was talking about how the 2020, the coronavirus has affected my books, this book, Acoustic Rooster, was developed in combination with a play, a musical that would be performed in the Kennedy Center. And so it was scheduled for this past year, and the book was to come out about the same time to celebrate that musical. Well, unfortunately, 2020 happened, and the musical was postponed until next year. So the book came out as planned, but it will be, they'll refocus on that title again next year when the Kennedy Center is more involved and it's a bigger deal. Memoirs of a Tortoise, sorry, I could be holding these up. Memoirs of a Tortoise was a book that was done before the coronavirus in 2020. And it's a story about loss and friendship and appreciating the people that are around you and the things that you have. And this tortoise has a pet human. And so little did we know that when the book came out, we would be in the midst of a lot of loss and, the virus situation. And so I think it was perfect timing for the book, unfortunately. I mean, but kids, they're dealing with emotions and things that they're not used to feeling. And I think this book
also has a nice aspect of humor to it, where, where the owner's tossing a stick to the tortoise to go fetch.
Yeah. And Devin Scillian, the author of this book, is a great storyteller. He's a news anchor up in Detroit. He writes country music. And this is his 20th picture book or children's book. So he's a great storyteller, and he infuses a lot of humor into many of the stories that he writes. But it's a great little story.
It softens the edges on the sadness that happens in this book, which is certainly a reality in all of our lives. But being able to say that this has that balance. And again, here too, you've got that, here you've got a tortoise, a reptile, and it's so very expressive. Beautifully done.
Oh, thanks. The tortoises are a little more difficult. I always research, animals, characters, things that I'm working on. A lot of the flowers and things in this story, I had to see what kinds of plants grew in the southern part of the United States. Actually, when Devin wrote this story, he had read a story about an elderly couple in Hawaii they had a pet tortoise who was 65 years old, and they were making arrangements in their estate to plan for what would happen to their tortoise. And so that got him thinking about this, that pets, these tortoise pets live, some can outlive their owners.
That's quite
so that was kind of interesting. But the tortoise, he is sad when his owner stops coming out to play with him and feed him and spend time with him. And so he decides to visit his mother for guidance. And the mother, of course, is very wise and tells him that, your pets, your humans, are only here for a short time, and appreciate the time you have with them. And then there's a nice ending.
I wish we had more time too, but we're going to pause this so we can switch to Loren. And then at the end,
sure.
I'd like you to, if you can, talk a little bit more and extend with the thought that you have here and take it into the next one. But I'll help.
Okay. Thanks, Will, for moderating.
That's all right,
Thank
Tim.
you.
Thank you for all your insights. And Loren, we're here to be able to talk about your book, the retelling of The Night Before Christmas. So it looks like you're in your studio, and maybe since we're not at the Buckeye Book Fair and we're in your studio, could you just kind of tell us about your space a little bit?
I can definitely. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks to the Buckeye Book Fair. I can't wait to get back to the Buckeye Book Fair in person. So I'm down here in Cincinnati area, which is Southwest Ohio, and I have a studio here that's kind of just like on the top of an old garage. It's a sort of a mid-century modern house. And I'll just give you a little pan view. There's my dog. Can you see Charlie?
Mm-hmm. We can see.
That's my studio dog. We adopted him in March when the virus started. But Will, I normally worked in the two homes my wife and I owned and raised our family in a cramped studio space. And when we moved across town and purchased this house, we were surrounded by the beautiful Southwest Ohio trees. And even though we're in a neighborhood, we have a little bit of nature. And all I asked the architect that put this addition on was, give me windows, I'm not painting with north light. So I just have task lighting, and I sit here at my simple little drawing table, and I make these drawings. And to segue into The Night Before Christmas, what a wonderful opportunity for me to illustrate a famous classic. These words, and this is how it always starts, just with words on a piece of paper. You can see I start a lot of my books drawing in any old journal or sketchbook. But what happens is I like to pace out the story by dividing up the text. It kind of helps me with the rhythm and pacing of the story. And what I wanted to do, since this famous book is such a familiar Christmas poem, I thought it would be a good example to divide and share multiple families and multiple different types of regions in the country and different types of families, different types of people. Certainly even traveling across Ohio, we have such a rich, diverse population of the kinds of families we have. So what I decided is I would feature I wanted to do about 7 or 8 different families. But when you pace out a story, I had to somehow make Clement C. Moore's poem work from page to page. And it had to be that the viewer, even though some of the words are very familiar to some people, I had to make sure that there was a continuity throughout. And so I chose 4 different regions of the country, 4 different types of houses, 4 different types of families. Even there's an interfaith family in this night before Christmas. So I also wanted, let's see if you can see some of these sketches.
We can see them. Yeah, that's good.
So they're just thumbnails. And at this point, there's no wrong answer. We're not trying to make the most perfect art ever. And in this sketch sort of became this sketch. And you can see, just left to my own device here in my studio with Charlie, I really got into this one a little bit more. You can see I used a little ink on it. I'm really getting into the detail. And this is kind of at the point in this early program where I'm sure Chris and Will and all the illustrators, all of a sudden they start doing a piece of art that gets them excited and gets them thinking, okay, I can do this. I decided that I would have a family that lives in a mobile home in this. And here's one you can see in the final book. I've chosen to not have a mother, but a father. And these are all the questions an illustrator asks him or herself, when they're sitting with words in a studio.
That's absolutely right, Loren. And part of this whole thing about your settings, you really were able to do it and let us all be able to see this book in a new way. And to wrap up your session here, I was wondering what do you miss most about being with the folks at Wooster, Ohio, on a normal day like today? What do you miss most about not being at Wooster?
I'm glad you asked, because just connecting with people. I've been blessed to have a career in children's publishing, Will, for I guess going on around 15 years or so. And some of the first teachers and librarians and book lovers and booksellers I met were at the Buckeye Book Fair early in my career. And as well as I do, this is such an isolated career in a way. Parts of that I really love and enjoy, being alone, working on my art. But man, especially in children's publishing, there's no better way to see an audience. Like, some people do a lot of different kinds of art, but our art really has an audience. It's those children and those teachers and librarians, and being able to see them. And I feel like over the years, I have almost a family and friendships of people that will come to various events and signings. And that's what I miss most. And I look forward to getting back there.
Yeah, we all do, and very well said. Now I'm going to switch to Chris, and with Chris's book. Thank you so much, Loren, for being able to give us the studio tour and give us a lot of insights. Love seeing the sketches. And Chris, we're going to talk about your book, Breaking the Ice. And I just, I think this is probably pretty obvious, but who do you see is the perfect audience for your book?
Well, I'll hold it up too. There you go. So we got it twice up there, but clearly it's the series books. I've done a number of books that seem to feature women who have broken ceilings someplace, whether it was True Heart, Brave Harriet, The Mighty Jackie, and this one here, and also Miss Mary Reporting. This one here is about a young girl who she wanted to play hockey. And of course, when you're that age, you don't think about the barriers that exist because you just want to play. And fortunately, her father was accepting of it. I think her mom was a little bit shocked at first, but she had this love and wanted to play hockey. And I think she was able to excel at it. And people were able to see, because she was good, it didn't matter. And eventually, of course, it was able to take her to the NHL. So I think that kind of story is, quite frankly, appropriate for anybody. I mean, clearly we understand that it's appropriate for young women to see that there are people that break barriers. But quite honestly, the barriers don't have to necessarily be just a barrier of gender or race or, accessibility to things. Sometimes the barriers can be things that are just difficulties in your own life, whatever it may be. And people can and do, amazing things when they're driven by their passions for the things that they love. And,
Beautifully
so
said.
to me, yeah, you could say it's a wonderful book for a girl, but quite honestly, it's a story that story is every bit as good for a young boy too.
No
So
question.
I
And
think it's
also for the
absolutely a
people
great
that,
story on all ends.
including the people who put up the barriers, right? And I think that's
Absolutely, sure. And of course, in this particular story, she's not really. The barriers are. I caution using the word barriers. It's just people wondering, is that why? Why is this happening? Can she do it? And once, of course, they saw she could do it, the barriers all just trickled away.
yeah. The one thing about your illustrations, I mean, they capture so much emotion. But in this book, really, what's kind of critical that you do really well, but I don't want it to be overlooked, which is scale, which is her scale versus other scales. I mean, which can be the players that she's going to come against. I mean, they almost present themselves as a wall. I mean, but you do this in a way that allows the reader to identify. But for an artist, it's about composition and scale and placement.
Well, I mean, that was part of the story, because when she moved from the junior leagues all the way up, the minute she went into the first day of going into the arena where the NHL players were practicing, I mean, there was a clear distinction of the size of the players that were playing at that time. I mean, they're huge people now. Some of those hockey players are 6'8", and you put them on a pair of skates, now they're 7 feet tall. And so, it was a great challenge. But again, the thing is, she was up to it. And, some people, I think, questioned and thought, well, is Tampa doing this for a publicity stunt? Well, when she got in the game, she performed. No, it wasn't a stunt. She could play the game, and she belonged, and she proved it.
One of the tricky things illustrators that have to deal with this idea, which is telling a story of a person through the different ages of their life, and then also knowing that that's a very specific person.
Right.
That and also to be able to say, am I going to work from photos? How do I make their expressions work so they seem alive? How do you deal with that really challenging problem? And for the reader, it's very transparent. That's not apparent because you pull it off. But
well, to some degree, it depends. It depends on how much, the publisher really wants you to focus on the true reality of the person. Because whether it's Miss Mary reporting or Manuel, the average kid in North Carolina, New Mexico, Seattle, wherever it may be, they may not be familiar with the person. So how much do we have to focus on it? In this particular one, since Mannion is still very much a part of what's going on out there, we wanted to focus and come close. About the only thing I tried to do, carry it through, was with the hair. In other words, from when she was young to when she was, I pretty much so kept it always in a ponytail. There was one picture that they asked me not to have her in a ponytail. But I felt that the color of her hair and the ponytail, no matter what uniform she was wearing, whether she was in uniform or with her family or talking with a coach or a general manager, she was all, even from behind, you saw the ponytail, you knew who that was. And that was kind of the unifying thread that carried through the character all the way through.
Along with that, I'm going to kind of wrap it up with this part of it, but you were able to change the settings from daytime to nighttime to a beautiful spread. For me, and we talked about this yesterday, that climax spread of being able to see her being announced as a player and her face being on the Jumbotron, where you're able to pick a point of view, and you do this throughout the book, whether it's practicing on a twilight moment and getting those colors right, whether it's nighttime, daytime, all of these things help move the timeline of the book, but are done. So how do you think about that? Loren was talking about early on about how you're planning a book. Is that something done in the planning, or how does that evolve for you?
Well, I mean, I do have sketchbooks just like Loren, and I think probably Tim, most of everybody does. I start off just sketching. And I mean, I have sketchbooks that, they're filled with all kinds of drawings. So I fill them up with drawings, but I'll sit there and I'll take one of those pages and I'll start doodling away. And you think of it almost in the way a cinematographer looks at a film. And where do you want the close-ups? Where do you want to pull back? What are you trying to say? What's the mood that you're trying to say? When do you want to get intimate? When do you want to be able, like I say, tell a bigger story? And clearly the one that you're talking about where the crowd is into it, and it's that moment where you see your face up on a Jumbotron and the whole world sees your face on a Jumbotron. That's what you're trying to capture in that moment.
Yeah, and you did it. And it was absolutely beautiful. I'm going to come back to everyone, but I'm going to do my bit, which is a reading of my story. So for the next 6 minutes, you'll hear that, and then we'll wrap it up. So right now, we'll make that switch. And
Snow Friends by Marjorie Kyler and illustrated by Will Hillenbrand. Snow, snow, and more snow. Oscar couldn't wait to go outside, but no one was awake, not even his boy Matt. Oscar waited and waited until he heard Matt stirring. Oscar grabbed his leash and ran to his boy's room. "Walk," he barked. "Not now," said his boy. "Now," Oscar barked. Matt sighed and got up, then shuffled to the back door. "Go play in the yard," he said. "I'll take you for a walk later." "Snow," barked Oscar. What next? Oscar chased a cat up a tree. Made a doggy angel and barked at the birds. What else can I do? I know, I'll take my own walk. Oscar raced down the street. He chased a bunny to an icy pond. Just then, a ball came sailing through the air. "Fetch!" a little girl yelled. "Mine! Mine!" Back at home, "Where's Oscar?" "He's run away." Uh-oh! Oscar! Let's go find him. Back in the woods, the two dogs dashed around trees. Up and down hills, and across snowy fields. "Let's build a snow dog," barked Oscar. "Let's ice skate," yelped Daisy. "Let's build an igloo," barked Oscar. Suddenly, Oscar and Daisy smelled something familiar. "Oscar! Daisy!" "That's my girl," yelped Daisy. "That's my boy," barked Oscar. The two dogs ran through the snow, up the hill, and jumped on their owners. "Oscar!" yelled Matt. "Daisy!" yelled the girl. Kaboom! They all fell over. They rolled and rolled downhill until they landed in a heap. Oscar licked Matt's face. "My boy," he barked.
Thanks, Rick.
Daisy licked her girl's face. "My girl," she yelped. Then off they ran. Snow friends.
All right. Well, back to the Q&A and to finish up some of the questions that I'd like to be able to engage with, to start off with, which, and this will just go in the order that we already talked about. So we'll go from Tim to Loren to Chris to answer the question. If a child came up to your Buckeye Book Fair table and they said, what advice would you give me to be able to become a writer or an artist? What advice do you have, Tim?
Well, thinking back to when I was a kid, materials were always available. There was always a stack of paper and some pencils. And one of the biggest things is just to sit and practice, get away from the screen once in a while, although you can create art on a screen, but, just sit and practice, get some instruction. Back in the day, it was John Nagy, or it was, somebody on TV, and whatever the current, if you can get some instruction and practice, it's a great start.
Loren, what advice would you have?
I would say draw, just like Tim. Draw for fun. Don't worry about being the best. Don't worry about getting too serious about it. The other thing is, I would say, see if you can go to an art museum once in a while and stand in front of some of those old paintings or new paintings and just try and become a little bit interested in the art.
Yeah, good. And Chris, you're not only young people, but you're young people and your master's students and your students you had at Columbus College of Art and Design. I mean, tell us what your advice would be.
Well, I think these guys both hit it. You gotta like it first. You have to like it. I mean, it's each one of us have the great fortune of doing the thing we love for our living, and so you got to love it. You got to enjoy it. And so if you have a joy at looking at somebody else's art and learning from it, do it. You draw all the time and you look. And yeah, you go to a museum, you look at the art there. You open up a comic book, you look at the art there. You look at all different sources of art. I mean, the idea that everything comes from one source is just, it comes from everywhere, because whether we like it or not, art is absolutely around us in everything, everything. And so whether it's in books, whether it's on television, whether it's on a movie, at a studio, somebody else's studio, an art fair, a museum, you have to love what you're doing, because as Loren said, for the most part, we're at home alone and we're just making art. And we like that solitude, and nobody is standing over us saying, you got to do this, you got to do this. You do it because you love it. That's first and foremost.
Yeah, and so working under lockdown or whatever that is isn't anything that's working at home is where we are, and after the virus, I don't think that's going to change for any of us. I wonder if you could just tell us, and some of this will be kind of obvious, but what would be the best time, for whatever book you want to talk about? When's the best time to read this book? If you were to say, to pick out a time for the reader to be coming in. Loren, I know your answer, but you can say it anyway. But we'll start again with Tim. When's a good time?
The best time to read is any time. You carve out a little time if you're a parent, they jump on your lap, you pick out a book and you read. Nighttime, when things are settled down a little bit, is a great time, but any time's a good time to, read a book. Find a nook, find a corner, find a little place where you can, just quiet and let your imagination, let the words and pictures take you somewhere.
Great. Loren?
Well, certainly, the night before Christmas, a really appropriate time would be to read that the night before Christmas, Christmas Eve. That could be a family tradition, but I would echo Tim, like, for example, my Otis books, any time of the day, and I could just speak to
I think we've got a little lag with
the parents. You're so tired at the end of the baths and everything, and I remember it being a slight bit of a chore, but the cherished memories I even have as a parent reading to my two boys, usually before bedtime, will live with not only them forever, but with me forever. What I wouldn't give to have them 4-year-olds on my lap. One more time.
And Chris, when's a good time?
Well, because it's sports, the subject, this particular one is sports, when it's a nice day, you want the kids outside playing the sports, enjoying the day, being active, but then there's those days where it's 40 degrees, cold, dreary, and yucky. And so, okay, that it would be maybe that time of day when they would like to be out playing, that you can take that moment and give them that experience when it's kind of yucky outside. I mean, clearly also, as they all said before going to bed, same experience I had with our kids. Love being able to read to them in the evenings before they nod off. But if you're talking about that perfect time to read the book, like I said, instead of being outside on the beautiful day, when it's a dreary, cold day, bowl of tomato soup and a book to read, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, I agree. For my book, this would be good. I always think about reading to an audience. The Theater of the Laugh is a great place, and the narrator has a voice all their own. This one would be well set with a cup of hot chocolate and a snowy day. I'd like to thank my panelists. That you all did a brilliant job, and that was like the easiest thing in the world to do, to be able to have you as my panelists and to be able to make an extra special experience for our friends. We all hope that next year we'll be with you in person. But until that time, we'll be with you on the pages of our books. Come visit us there. We'll be waiting for you every single time. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Will, for moderating. It was a great panel. And so we'll look forward to seeing all of you next year.
Thank you.
Thanks.